New way to work.
I'm going to pop this up over here.
Oops.
All right, we're live.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Social Selling Hour number 27. Brian is having a blast in New York City at the New Way to Work IBM event. So Reed Robinson from Hootsuite has been gracious enough to be my co-pilot for today. Welcome, Reed. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Happy to be here today, and hello everybody.
And for those that are not as familiar with you as I am, can you give a little backstory of what you do at Hootsuite?
Sure. So I'm Reed here. I'm also found at Hoot Reed as my handle. I work in our sales team on the enterprise development side. So I work with, working with a lot of companies on assessing, how we can help them grow in their social business space. And as well, I've recently been given the tasks of working on our social selling initiatives. So training and working with our team to become more social savvy from a sales perspective, as well as doing the online social listening for Hootsuite and gathering those insights online.
Very cool. So yeah, this topic is very near and dear to my heart. So I've been looking forward to it for a couple of weeks now. So for you, what does social selling mean?
For me, I look at social selling. I like to be a little bit simple sometimes, and it's really just looking at adding a layer of social on top of the everyday sales activity to better engage with your contacts. And that's simply how I look at it overall.
Okay. Let me see here. Just lost my document. So I get asked quite frequently, what is a chief listener? It's a unique role. I know there are a few others out there. I think there's one at Dell. My CMO at Pipeliner actually gave me the title a couple years ago, and it's stuck, and I truly love it because it does generally encompass everything that I do. But for those of you who aren't familiar with my daily tasks, for me, a chief listener means someone who is always looking out for brand mentions, brand sentiment, and also industry trends, and that includes tools and tactics. So a large part of my role today is actually sourcing new tools that can make our social selling and social business activities easier.
I think that's a lot. It makes sense. I mean, obviously, coming from my area, I love social listening, and I love keeping an eye on all those different things, from brand mentions to just being able to capture activity that's related to your company online and your industry.
So for you, social listening is a huge part of social selling. So why is it important to pretty much every business today?
I think to me, social listening it's really important because it's about actively monitoring what's being said in your brand, your industry, and obviously for potential buying signals. That's your dream a lot of the time with social listening. But all the time, for me, people don't go around generally posting, I really want a social relationship platform that I can use for my entire sales team. Anybody have recommendations? I guarantee you, if anybody does say that, I'll pick up on it. But that's why it's important to use other social listening tools to look at social cues and understand when people are open to engaging and trying to be able to actually have a relationship with them from a human level, so that you're finding the right people to be speaking with.
I completely agree. And I think it's important to remind people that social listening is a really proactive role. I think it kind of has a reputation of being kind of passive and you're hearing things after the fact. But like you just mentioned, if you're monitoring keywords that, they're highly unlikely to use, your brand or buzzwords that you're familiar with in your industry. So if you're looking, thinking outside the box and finding conversations where people don't even know they really have a problem, but you have a great solution and that can make their work life easier, I think that's the sign of a really successful social listening campaign.
Absolutely.
And I know for me, like CRM is kind of a small bubble, and I know we talked about this last time we were on a Hangout, and nobody knows what that means. That acronym is not that well known outside of our space. So my keywords have a lot more to do with, contact management, customer database, productivity even, and that's how I find people to engage with online.
Awesome.
So Reid, do you have any social listening secrets that you can share with us?
I do have a lot of secrets, and there are certain things I love doing. For one, I mean, on the really basic level, I mean, we're not talking secrets here, but Twitter lists, when I'm working on training my sales team here and kind of getting them, as advanced as they can be, I find that Twitter lists is like the first thing that I need to train them on and show them how to do effectively. I think, as with social media overall, there's a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon quickly, and now it's a lot about trying to figure out what actually works, what's effective. That's one thing I love.
I think you've paused. I think Reid's screen has frozen, but I'll keep trucking along. My biggest secret, I guess it's not really a secret, it's more common sense, and it's ultimately you need to know how to use your tools. So whatever tools you choose, learn how to use them to their fullest capacity, and then if they fall short in a certain area, find a new tool to supplement them. My toolkit is vast, and it's ever-changing as new tools become available. And I guess my only constant standard, actually, over the last few years has been Hootsuite, and I credit that to their evolving just as fast as the social selling and social media space is evolving, and that's really cool to have a tool that's been able to grow with me and expand as my skill set has evolved. You are still frozen, Reid. I'm going to take this moment to look at our stream and see what's going on. Oh, it looks like Reid's computer has kicked him off the Hangout, so hold on while he's going to reboot and come back and share that secret with us. In the meantime, if anyone has any great tips for how they listen to their communities, shout them out. We do have a question from Bertram. Are you listening with the intent to respond or to gather information? And it's both, almost on a 50-50 level. I think it's important to engage at the right time, not just immediately, and gathering information about your brand and how people are currently feeling about it. And that comes down to also not just mentioning your Twitter handle, but looking for mentions of your brand without the direct social network profile. That's where you'll really find out how people are thinking. And there are a lot of tools to enable you to do that, but it's actually really simple even to do in most social media dashboards like Hootsuite or TweetDeck that allow you to put in a Boolean search.
All right, I think I'm back. And
are you back?
Yes.
You left me by myself.
I know, I apologize.
I was trying to avoid this.
So when IT tells you that you should regularly restart your computer to avoid random power downs of your MacBook, apparently it is advisable to listen to them.
All right, so back to you. What is your social listening secret?
So, I was going to say this, and my social listening secret is really looking in for early buying signals to try when you're looking at finding the right type of people to engage with. one of the greatest examples that I love saying comes from the insurance industry. And it's when, you can actually look for people who have potentially had a new baby or a life-changing experience. You can start to target in your territory who's saying words like expecting a child, had a baby, buying a cradle, all those different types of indicators, because then you put them to a Twitter list and you're able to then nurture that list and keep an eye on those people to engage with when it comes time later down the road, because that's your bread and butter market. Those are the people that you're looking for that at some point are also looking for you. So you're able to monitor that list for when they're actually looking into things that are related to you or something that you could take a more active role in engaging with. And so that's one of the things I love, is not just waiting for people to, as I was saying, say, I need a social relationship platform right now, but really trying to find out what are those early signs. And for a lot of people and a lot of companies, you have to know your customer. You have to understand what their buying journey looks like and what are the types of things that they're involved with before they come to you. So yeah.
Are there any triggers that you look for? Like, is their number of followers or the number of people they're following, is that a trigger for you to know if someone is, obviously as the account's getting larger, is that a more viable prospect?
For me, yeah. I mean, I'll give you one example I like to see. As you know, with Hootsuite, we have a free side, a pro side, and enterprise. I like looking at people that are potentially using Hootsuite, Hootsuite Free, Hootsuite Pro, and posting content that's related to, I'll give you one example, customer service. So I'll have a search stream for source Hootsuite, and then looking for people posting, sorry for the inconvenience, confirmation number, all those different words that a customer service handle might be using. Because that, for us, customer service tends to be a very enterprise-specific use case that we can kind of look for to get those types of insights for accounts.
And do you keep your lists public, or are they private on Twitter when you're segmenting?
Oh, they're all private lists. I think we're in a space, Hootsuite operates in a fun space, as I'm sure a lot of you know, that there are a fair number of companies and they're extremely social savvy, and we're extremely socially savvy. So we know that, if we have a public list that says like dream prospects, that's going to find its way into someone else's hand very quickly.
Yeah, actually I would say 95% of my lists are private, although I have been sharing a tip with people lately that seems to be working really well, that if you create a public list called something really fun like Social Selling Rockstars or something like that, and you're trying to get on somebody's radar or just grow your network, if you add people to that list, it's kind of, you're giving them like a little shout out, because they get the notification like, oh, you were added to Social Selling Rockstars, and they're like, wow, I like this person, so they're more likely to check you out, follow you back, and then you can kind of start a conversation with them.
Yeah.
And it works the same way even for prospects. You can come up with a fun list related to their industry, and it's a really subtle way to get their attention.
Yeah, I've seen that before, and I know, as most people who are on this list know, that you get added to list and you get that little notification that says you've been added, and I do find that interesting, is to see how people respond to those types of cues, and maybe that's when they pick up on your presence there. So that'd be cool.
Yeah, it's working really well for our sales team internally. A lot of them are new to the concept of social selling, so it's growing their networks is the first step. So it's been a cool little tip you can share with the community. Write that down, people. Clever lists. So I know my definition of social selling is a little bit different to a lot of people out there right now. I kind of refer to it as a marketing-enabled sales process. That's kind of the term that I've been using, because I think it sums up my thoughts. And it's a lot more lead generation and nurturing than anything else. And not to say that there isn't the end goal being a sale, but the activities involved with what we're currently terming social selling, it's not really selling at all. Would you agree, Reed?
Yeah, I think we've had this discussion before, is trying to find a different moniker for it, because it's not we're not going in there with a hardcore sales pitch or an ask, and I think that's important to teach people as well, as you're not always going in with an ask.
Most definitely. Yeah, for me, I think it's more about education and positioning yourself as a trusted advisor, and not just you, but also your brand as representative of your brand. It's important that people can trust you. And I'm always telling people that you need to be well versed not only in your product, but also your competitors. That's one of my main pet peeves right now with people who are out there social selling, as they don't know who their competitors are. So if I ask you a simple question like, how do you compare to XYZ, and you don't have a quick comeback to that, you lose my trust. And if you've never even heard of the company XYZ, we're not even going to have a conversation. So you really need to be up on your game. And information is really easy to find these days with websites and social media. There's really no excuse for not being well versed.
Yeah, I think that comes down to be a trusted advisor in your industry, in your sector. Not only do you have to understand the industry and how those different companies might be using, so well for me for social media, but for whatever it is that you work with them on, but understanding kind of the market that you operate in. I know for us, we have a 2-week kind of like boot camp type thing that's for all new hires for the sales team, and one of those things is definitely the competitive intelligence breakdown and how to talk about that.
So we have an interesting comment from, bring up their Twitter handle, Abtech USA. Their answer to number 4 for what is social selling is leveraging social media to enhance conversion rates. And I guess from a roundabout way, yes, it is, because the goal is a sale. But I really feel that just increasing brand awareness and engaging in conversations that people already have should be the primary focus.
Yeah.
Let's see what else I can put an active stream today.
I like Christine Mikulka. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. She's like, Chris Mikulka 4 said that social listening shouldn't just include the specific keywords related directly to you, but the ones your community cares about. And that's 100% accurate. And that's one of the things I love. I'm sorry to keep saying this, but about the Twitter list side that I teach people is that when you have a Twitter list of your industry and your sector, you start to know how they talk and what they're talking about. One of the great things that I found when I was working on the sales side was by doing that, the next time I got someone on the phone and had a discussion with them, I was able to know what events they were at, what people in their industry were talking about. Be like, oh, how was that LinkedIn Connect meeting in Vegas, especially when you're talking with those HR people when that was coming up. It was just great to be able to actually relate to them and be able to be somebody that they can sound like they can trust, that's related to their industry, and is like one of their peers for that. And I think that's really important there. It's a good point.
I agree completely. So we have an interesting question from Dave Stein, who's actually one of our past guests. He's asking, can someone talk about how they manage times of day, then the time zone overlay for international? So Hootsuite, global team, but your role is very unique in the company. So how do you manage conversations that are taking place 24/7?
Understood. So do you, okay, so there's two sides. For me, I'll talk more about me from kind of like the Hootsuite side as opposed to me personally. So for me, I work with one of the handles that we have, Hoot Business, which might soon change, but one of the ways that I work, I actually have 2 counterparts in our London office and a counterpart in our APAC team in Singapore. And I've actually worked with kind of training them a little bit in how to respond to different conversations, as well as how to start those types of conversations. So I have them, they use actually my monitoring streams in their local time, as well as translated into their local regional languages. And so they're able to continue conversations that I was having from that handle, as well as to pick up on new ones that then the next morning I can jump in on ones that they left off. And it creates a much more seamless transition, because one of the first problems I found was the people in Australia would be, my phone would start dinging at 2 in the morning, and I would be able to respond once, but then fall back asleep. Also learned that pillow tweeting is a terrible idea. You end up sending out, your grammar is just terrible, and things just go wrong. But being able to work with your team on those local areas, because not only were they able to learn a lot more about how to do social selling themselves from their sales side, but able to help me out and help the team generate stuff that way.
Yeah, I had a similar experience when I was at Nimble, being kind of a a one-girl team, I was responding to tweets at all odd hours because my phone would ding, and you want to be responsive. But I think now my mindset has changed a little bit, and people really do appreciate a well thought out, well spelled response, not necessarily responding in 5 minutes, but something that actually adds value and more information. So I think for Dave, I think it's more about just add value when you can, and it's timing isn't always as important as people think it is. Even on Twitter, which is an incredibly fast-paced network, I think people do generally appreciate a great response versus a really flippant, quick response.
Yeah, for sure.
Get back to my Twitter doc. Let's see. So, okay, we'll still talk about Twitter here. I know we talked about Twitter lists, but is there another, underutilized feature of Twitter that you think people need to be aware of?
I think for the people on this discussion, I think you guys all know Twitter fairly well. I think a lot of it just comes down to exploring the different capabilities of, if you want to talk listening tools, then sure, that it's kind of exploring the different capabilities that go beyond, the native side. So starting to amalgamate information, starting to filter down some of the noise. I think filtering down the noise is probably one of the biggest things for most brands and salespeople today. You have a preliminary discussion with any sales executive and ask them, if they're able to find a lead through social media. You'll most likely get a laugh and say that, social media is only for sharing things from Mashable and cute dog photos. But it's about, showing them that they can filter that information into something that's relevant for themselves and for their job.
Yeah, I think when I was writing out these questions, my answer was Twitter lists to this question, which I know we covered, but they kind of work in two ways. So you can, pull them into various platforms, but they're also great for finding new followers on other people's lists. So I've had a lot of luck going to, competitors, people I respect, and going through their lists and seeing who they're following, who they're engaging with, who they're watching, which is particularly useful for competitors. Mm-hmm. So I think, lists are definitely something that everybody needs to utilize. Let's see if anybody had some clever answers on the Twitter stream.
I have one guy, Andrew Smith, said ha who'd read translating American into English local language for my reference to the UK team. Just to clarify, our UK team does all of Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So I am, but yeah, we're also in Canada, but I am from America, so I would speak American style English, just with the occasional E instead of an A and extra U's thrown in everywhere.
There are small differences, though, that really do change the tone of a sentence. So it is good to be well-versed in the vernacular of where you're tweeting. And then I know you'll agree with this. There's a comment, social selling is a misnomer. And I know that's my challenge to the community today. For my birthday, I would like somebody to come up with a better term other than social selling. I think it's definitely time that we start the evolution and move on to something that's more apt.
Yeah, I will. I've joked with Rachel sometimes that to come up with a different name, we'll have to have a few bottles of wine, beer, and just try to bounce ideas back and forth to see what's happening. Just because something needs to, that we need to have something that sticks well with people, that doesn't scare people away, but also encompasses everything that we're working on here.
Yeah, I think people are, depending on which camp you're in, they're scared of the social part or they're scared of the selling. So I don't know if it's possible to come up with a new word that doesn't involve those two. I think it's a lot about engagement. So yeah, I'm be really curious to see some of the responses.
Yeah, for sure.
So an important part of being social is obviously content curation and distribution. Can you explain a little bit about how you curate content to share on your social networks?
Yeah, so I kind of laugh a little bit. Today is so I started in the sales team. That's where I got started and hired into, and I worked in our lead generation side and dabbled a little bit into the social selling side and making really cool search streams with our listening capabilities, and that gained traction, and I ended up taking on a role heading up the social selling initiatives. And today is my first day where every Monday I'm sitting with our marketing and community teams to actually work on content for our Hoot business handle. So this question, I'm actually more interested in what other people use. In Hootsuite, I use our suggested content tool, which is kind of in beta right now. Some of you play around with it. It's really interesting and works for some of that. And as well, luckily we're growing exponentially and have a large marketing team. I mean, we split offices maybe 6 months ago, and the sales team is in a new one. When I came back here, there's probably about 100 people that I never met 6 months ago, which is pretty crazy to see. So it's interesting, and we have a huge blog and content, machine, it seems, that just like every day I saw the content calendar of like how blog posts come out. So using what you have, and one thing I'm always really stressful about, and I've discussed this a lot on this chat before, is marketing and sales need to work together, because salespeople every day talk to people who are valuable and they know what they're looking for. I've talked to certain industries where they're like, we're dying for information to figure out how we can use analytics in our specific space, because we're not, especially in the B2B market. So being able to actually tell that to your marketing team, and then them come back with really great content that uses some clients we have or anything like that, and then being able to, the marketing team to let the sales team know, hey, we actually made this, and be able to send that out. So just that relationship there really needs to solidify in a lot of companies, and I think it's always kind of this toss-up, it seems, sometimes, and some friction that always occurs. But really having two-way communication there, I think, is extremely crucial for a lot of companies today.
Yeah, I agree, and that is definitely an ongoing battle. I can maybe only name a few companies that I think have true alignment that we can all aspire to. And I think a lot of it just has to do with the attitudes of the team. A lot of people are used to being siloed, and change is hard. So, but being a more collaborative business is the way of the future. So I'm very hopeful that things will get better. And then I know my view of content creation and particularly distribution has changed recently, and I think a lot of it is just a pure reaction to all of my streams being so cluttered and cluttered with all the same stuff. I'm in the CRM social selling bubble, so I see the same articles from the same people everywhere, just shared verbatim with no commentary. So I've been making a real concentrated effort recently to, when I share something, I add my own viewpoint. And there are great tools out there that allow you to do that really cleverly. Like Meddle.it is one of my favorites, also Scoop.it. So you read great articles and then you share it, but you add the value up front, kind of as you would on LinkedIn. You kind of add that lead in, like why I read this, here's my takeaway, and then you start a dialogue. So I'm really hoping that the pendulum shifts. And I know people out there, the gurus and the experts are still preaching, you got to tweet on the hour, every hour, but that really affects how much content is being read. And I think we're having a real deficit in knowledge retention. And there's just a lot of bad content that's just being shared around because no one's actually read it, so they don't know it's bad. So I hope more people take the time to actually read and add their thoughts before sharing. And that's my rant.
It's okay, and I see a lot of fun things coming in now too. I just love seeing what people actually have to say about this, because I think this community is a really good one for people that are involved in this from all different sides, from working with a lot of companies to doing everything themselves. So it's fun to see.
Well, so there's a great question from Dave again, one of my favorites in the community. What can all of us do to eliminate some of the noise? And I like to think that what I'm suggesting helps eliminate the noise. I think if you actually read over 50% of the content you share, you'll be sharing less, but it'll be useful. And then I think using tools like Manage Flitter or Follower Wonk that identify when you should share content that's the best for your networks, I think will also help with that. So if you find out that people most likely click on your tweets between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m., so maybe you share 4 tweets during that time frame and not again until the evening. I think the pressure to just, be this machine that's like constantly pumping out content is the wrong approach. And it's just making the streams incredibly busy.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting. I think, I think you said it well. I'll leave it there, actually.
I want to see if anybody else has any suggestions, because this topic, I'm very passionate about it. I wish everybody would read more, because it makes you wonder. Like, there's also, I think businesses are feeling so pressured to put out content regularly, but if no one's reading it, perhaps you could only put out 2 blog posts a week versus 1 every day. And you could use those resources that are busy writing your content for other things like social listening or social selling.
Exactly.
So a lot of people seem to be in agreement that the noise is annoying.
I was just about to say that there's quite a lot of it. And I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see that it's not just me going crazy here. There's often times where, especially when I sit on with the sales team, so I'll be like talking about this, and the guy next to me just kind of laughs because I'm the one that's like buried into our dashboard and into social like almost 24/7 it seems. So when I complain about all this stuff, they have basically no idea what I'm talking about. It's as if I'm complaining about different capabilities of form filling to them.
Yeah, it's so we have a great tweet from Greg Heyer. He says, too much content can attract the wrong prospects. Narrow your content offering to attract the right prospect, which I think is a great tactic. I think people are a little scared to, kind of really focus on a certain persona, but I think that's where you see the most success. Like, if you truly know who your target customer is and you write for them, you know their pain points, you have the right solution, focus on benefits, not features, I think your efforts will be rewarded. So I think that's a great point, Greg. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see what else is going on. Oh, and another great comment from the MoviStream team. They're saying the content we share needs to be the icing on the cake to the conversations we're having on social, which I think is an interesting concept, where I guess it's the content you're sharing kind of validates your viewpoint on certain topics. Yeah,
and I think that's absolutely true. And I know, when I talk to people sometimes about like, they choose to share content, sometimes I'm like, did you read the whole article? And sometimes they didn't, because at the pace that everybody tries to push out content, some people say that you should be posting, personally, sometimes hard for an individual, like 24 times a day. Being able to read that much at the end of a day of doing your normal tasks is sometimes extremely daunting. But I think this is where brands can actually, organizations and companies can work together with their sales team on this, is by giving them something like a content library, giving them a list of content that's approved for these specific areas. I know we use one that kind of breaks it down by industry, by vertical. That really helps. So if you're looking for stuff to share in healthcare, you know that this area has been approved by your team who you trust, and that it should be relevant to your markets because it's developed alongside with them. And so I love having that. I know, when we talk from an SMB side, it's not always possible to have that kind of power behind you, but when you can, it's very helpful, and use it. If you have access to it and you're not using your marketing team's content library and stuff that they recommend, just use it. It's probably really good.
Yeah, I agree. That's actually a really fantastic suggestion. I think people they're scared to reshare things multiple times. So I know I have like a spreadsheet of what I call my evergreen content, which is a mix of content for my company that I really found value in, and then also things that I found elsewhere. And I share them frequently. I mean, not on the hour, every hour, but a couple times a week I will share the same articles. And I think because people don't always see it, so I think it doesn't hurt to share it a couple times, particularly if it's something that you really want to stand behind. I think that's a really good suggestion.
Yeah, for sure.
So I know you're kind of a tool junkie like me. So other than Hootsuite, what tools do you have in your toolkit?
Yes. So, firstly, I'll have to do one shameless plug. You'll have to forgive me. I apologize. A lot of people that use Hootsuite don't know we also have, integrations. We have like 110 integrations at this point. But one that we work very closely with, as we acquired them, is actually called Uberview, and it's our monitoring tool. I use it a lot to monitor what's being said for real-time listening. Plugs in amazingly with our dashboard. That's all I'll say on that, and I'll move on. The other two that I love, and I absolutely love them from a social listening and social selling perspective, is Riffle. It's a tool called Riffle. It's made by CrowdRiff. I use it a lot just to learn more about my prospects and their social accounts. So it gives you a breakdown of their top mentions, their top hashtags, their level of engagement by sent tweets, replies, retweets, and it shows you their other connected social profiles. So it's an app that goes right into Hootsuite. It's also a Chrome extension. And I love it because it just allows me to see, right before if I were prospecting, I'm sending an email, it allows me to see, hey, what does this person care about? What do they talk about? If I see them doing the hashtag CustServe a lot, I know that that's something I'm probably going to talk about customer service in my messaging to them. If they send out, if I see in their share ratio that their messaging ratio that they reply to things more than 15% of the time, I'm likely going to try reaching out to them on Twitter as opposed to sending them an email because there's someone who's actively engaged on Twitter. And so being able to see that is really valuable, and I've found that it's a great thing to show. On the email side, there are two tools that I love. I think they're quite well known at this point. One's Reportive, and just being able to see the social profiles linked to an email address. The other one's Charlie app. If you haven't looked into it, it's a pretty cool one. It kind of gives you a dossier of what is relevant to or kind of about your prospect. So it links to your calendar. I think it's a Gmail integration currently, and it gives you a breakdown of that person, their social profiles, what do they post about the company, is their company in the news lately, what are the news articles about, and breaks that down and kind of even shows what you share similar, like how many Twitter connections you have shared, how many topics you have shared. And that's really cool to just have 15 minutes before a meeting to see.
Okay, so it sounds, have you used Refresh?
Refresh.io, yes. Very similar to that as I understand.
Okay. Yeah, I've been using that tool for a while. First on my phone and now the browser version, which is really cool. It's almost kind of creepy in a way how much data it's able to pull in. Especially when you see family members, you're like, dang, they got everything. So it's not just pulling in your latest social interactions, but it's really a whole snapshot of who you are and who everybody else is. But it's also very clever, and it's great for finding engagement opportunities. But I'll definitely check out, what was it called again? The Charlie
app.
Charlie app. Okay. I need to add that to my list. And then for me, I have a lot of favorites, and they're constantly changing depending on the projects I'm working on. Obviously, Hootsuite, I'll give a shameless plug also. It's kind of the backbone to everything that I do. I'm also a big fan of RivalIQ for monitoring brand mentions. It's really great for pinpointing what's working. So you can plug in, your social accounts, also those of your competitors, and it'll alert you when someone's post is doing really well. And you can drill down and see exactly what it is. So you may want to share that content or share something similar. And then if they make any, updates to their profiles, you're also alerted, which is useful information when you're out there listening in the social circles. I use a lot of Google Alerts, which is kind of old school these days, but they still work like a charm. And also Topsy, which I think is kind of a long forgotten tool, but still great for pulling in social mentions. And I just started using a tool called LikeHack, which aids with content curation. And I'm still in my first week, so I don't have a formal opinion, but I'm liking it so far.
Yeah. I know Dave Stein once again just posted, is there some place reliable we can go to get these tools? I'll post, in a second, I'll post a link for some of them, for the ones I mentioned. Rachel, is there a place that they can go to get all the information?
Well, if there are more hours in the day, I would do a blog recap of Social Selling Hour. No, but I'll send, Dave, I'm happy to send you an email, and I'll also share out, again, on Twitter, the tools that we're suggesting with the links on. They're actually, all the ones that I've mentioned are free with the exclusion of Hootsuite, which is still a very minimal cost.
Yeah. And for most individuals, you can always use their Hootsuite free. But
Yes.
not for a large company, I would almost imagine.
Yeah. No, I've been using the Pro version, and it's more than adequate for my personal and professional use.
Awesome. Always love hearing that, as you can imagine.
Let's see. Question 8. Okay. So I'm a firm believer that you can calculate the ROI of all social activities, the combinations of tracking pixels on social sites, UTM codes, but is that really what people should be focusing on? Or should there be something more like brand awareness or engagement stats that you think carry more weight, Reid?
It's a good question, and I think as you said, business leaders, they should really assess their sales organizations to begin with. I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but while ROI is really important to be looking at in terms of how effective everything's going, I think the first step you should always take is understand how social savvy your sales executives are currently. What are they doing to engage on social media? Most large sales organizations that I've worked with and spoke to say that they have, they're always like, oh yeah, we have about 10 to 15 people, I'd say, that are really active on social media, and they say it's going well. And I'm like, well, have you spoken to them to see what they're doing specifically? And they're like, no, that's a good idea. And I'm like, yes, it is. You should. I know. And I'm like, figure out what your team is already doing to be social savvy. Figure out how they're connecting with people to generate more sales. And when you talk to them, you can even figure out what they're doing and work to yourself to figure out, don't reinvent the wheel, just amplify and formalize in training what they're already doing to the rest of your team. What I tell other teams who don't have a lot of people that are currently active is try setting up a pilot project. Salespeople, we are really motivated by what works and what gets us more deals and money at the end of the day. And so if we see that 15 people are in this cool pilot project and they're hitting their quota numbers over and over again, and they're saying that they were able to do this over this social selling thing, then they're going to be much more interested in trying to figure out how they can do it themselves and they can enable it. And I think that's why, to begin with, that's important. After that comes in, once you have that process and you're able to educate and formalize those processes, you can tie in ROI tracking into all of that with the right capabilities there.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I guess it's kind of like which the chicken or the egg. You need to have brand awareness before you have something to track. So there isn't really a right or wrong answer, but for me, I think especially when they're starting out with social campaigns, awareness really should be the primary focus, because when more people are talking about you, you see more dollar signs, which is a pretty simplified version, but at the end of the day, that's right, you get more referrals, and referrals are the best type of business, and I think that should be the primary activity when you're starting out.
Absolutely. And I'm curious what people say to this question as well, because it's such, I think, I forgot his name, but he was on last week, and he said, people always talk about ROI, but what's the ROI of a thank you note? He's like, we don't know, but we know it's important to send one. And that line stuck with me so well. I think I definitely retweeted it.
I think that was Anthony when we had Anthony Iannarino. Yeah. That spurred some lively debate as some colleagues of mine, because I think you can, in all honesty, track the ROI of a thank you note, because it's likely, it's a sign of goodwill, but that person again is likely to refer you, and we all know you can track referrals, so that comes back to that thank you note and your conversation. So it might not be a short-term process, but long-term, yes, that thank you note has huge ROI. So I know I have a couple catchphrases that I use frequently, not only just when I'm training people, but also when I'm participating in Twitter chats like this. One of my favorites is educate by example, which I tell people, it's kind of like, you treat others how you want to be treated. So I think if you behave how you want people to behave, they kind of reciprocate that behavior. I think that's really important on social. a lot of people are, especially salespeople, are just starting out on social. So participating in Twitter chats, watching how their colleagues interact, how other people converse online is really important. So if you're setting the standard high, people are more likely to follow that behavior. So for me, that's educating by example. So do you have any little catchphrases that you use, Reed?
No, not really. I will have to start working on more catchphrases, I think. If I come up with one, I'll send you a note. What about
And then you
anybody?
can start making graphics.
I know. Right? Start working on that. You know what? I'll send a message to our content team and writers and be like, guys, I need some catchphrases. Please help me out.
Yeah, actually, you think Hootsuite would have that would be in your content library, a list of phrases you guys can share.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll see.
And another one of my favorites is be interested to be interesting. And I use that one a lot because it kind of plays back to, Twitter's my favorite social network. And I like it primarily because there are so many subtle touches that you can use to get on someone's radar. And you can use it for a number of reasons, whether you're prospecting for new clients, or you're trying to get in touch with influencers. Adding them to a Twitter list, like we discussed earlier, is a fantastic way. You can retweet, favorite, all are super non-intrusive but very effective ways to get someone's attention. So I think if you show interest, you are then interesting to somebody, and that's a good mindset to have when you're engaging on social.
Smart.
So we're almost down to the 10-minute mark. Can you believe it?
Yeah. This is by the way, for everybody who doesn't know, this is my first time doing a Twitter chat from this side of the, whatever you want to call it, microphone screen. So I'm trying to manage a lot of things with Hootsuite and the chat, and just making sure that I'm saying everything properly.
You're doing a fantastic job.
And one of my colleagues is watching, and he recommends the catchphrase from T.S. Eliot that distracted from distraction by distraction. Right? But anyway, so not only do I have Hootsuite, I have my Google Hangout chats keep popping up from stuff as well. So glad you're all bearing with me here.
So we have some kind of fun ones popping up in the stream. Dave Stein says, "Don't say I want to be your partner," which I think is really common. Everyone's always like, "I want to partner up with you." I see that quite a bit, and I agree. You can be a little bit more original. Let's see, we've got walk the walk, talk the talk. Also a good classic. You need to practice what you preach, as they say.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring up one thing here, and I meant to say it earlier. I think someone mentioned Storify a while back, and I meant to say that I happen to really like Storify and things like Storify for sales tools, and especially when you're working on training some people in sales, because you're able to show them what type of messages they can engage with contacts with. I had the problem when I first started with a lot of people saying, all right, I filtered out the noise, I have my lists, I see people posting interesting things. How can I, what are the types of things I can do to engage with them? How can I, if I see someone replies a lot and is really active on Twitter, how can I reach out to them on social media that doesn't make it so, creepy or strange? So I was able to curate ones that our sales team had sent. So I went back and looked at what had been working for different sales executives and made a Storify board for everything to kind of track what was working, and shared it with our team. And I update it very frequently. I have my own Twitter list for our sales executives. I see what they're posting and kind of what is really funny. And some of them do amazing GIFs. Some of them do really funny images that they make themselves in MS Paint or whatever the Apple equivalent is that I use that still don't know the name of. Or various different things, and just being able to still be personable and funny works quite well. Obviously, I do tell people that before you be funny on social media to reach out to prospects and contacts, make sure that they're funny themselves. There are people who are very serious, and generally sending them gifs of Jonah Hill saying hashtag doesn't work too well. So there's fun things you can do, and just be able to curate them for your team.
Yeah, that's. I don't have much experience with Storify, but I know some of my colleagues use it regularly, and I like the way you can format the page. It's a really great way to incorporate a video and some supporting articles. So yeah, that's definitely a cool tool for everybody to check out. Another one that I've been playing with recently that is kind of on the down low, I think they're still in beta, is called Publicate, which is a tool where you could send articles to from your curation tools like Pocket, and then it allows you kind of a drag and drop. You can create mini websites that you can then share on social as a link, or you can drop into an email. So it's a really easy way, whether it's internally or to a prospect, pull in your evergreen content and it sends it out in a really bright, fun way. So that's also a good one to check out. So to wrap up the conversation, I have kind of a fun question that we ask a lot of our guests. Reed, what are your predictions for the future of social business?
Ooh, predictions. I think the one that I'm seeing more often from our perspective, and I have to say one of the things I love about working here is I get to I work specifically with like some of the largest companies for the most part, and being able to actually talk to the people in charge of heading up their strategy and hear about what they're doing, it gives you some cool insights to see where things are moving and where people think things are moving too. And I think we're seeing a much more integrated company is the first part, and this definitely ties in with social listening because social touches every aspect of a business, from its historical base in communications, marketing, customer support. Now it's moving into sales, HR, and even IT. I see sometimes, and it's going to be more ever present in organizations as they need to start figuring out how they can work together effectively. And I think sales execs, as I said earlier, are going to be working much more closely with marketing because they'll want to use their content for social prospecting. And social listening ties into the backbone of all of that, but as you become more present on social media as a brand and as a workforce, then you need to be able to monitor what's being said about you and facilitate that back to your team effectively. So if someone says something, you're like, okay, I was able to find out that this is actually a current client, let me pass it off to the person who works with them. Or be like, oh, this is actually something that's a customer service problem, I'm going to pass it to the customer service team, and it goes there. And I think we're seeing a lot more brands figure out how they can integrate all of that together.
Yeah, I agree, and my prediction is kind of a similar dream. I feel moving forward, while we'll still have experts on staff, you always need, in certain areas, people who that's their main focus is one specific thing. But I think we're going to see a lot more of what I call a hybrid employee. They'll be well versed in the product, and you can slot them into support, sales, marketing, customer serve, depending on what needs to be done that day. And I think these more well-rounded people are the future. And tools, for social listening, that won't just be a specific person's job. Like, me huddled in a dark room, just listening all the time. That'll be something that everyone will incorporate into their daily day. And we're starting to see that now. Like, social selling is kind of the first wave of that. But I think, if we're able to rename it to something more appropriate, the skills that are being developed and the applications to support that will become a part of every business professional's daily routine. And that goes a part of being, active online, but also just being very fluid and being able to move into whatever role you need to be in, and being whoever the client needs you to be at that time. So, typically if you're the first touch point, you stay that first touch point. I have clients from a couple jobs ago that still call me for advice, and I love that because it shows that, I'm their trusted person. So you need to be able to answer all their questions. And I think educating people and training them for that type of role is my dream for the future of business.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think we're going to see it. We're going to see a lot more training for employees on that. And with that, I think we'll see some fun things. And a lot of people. And I think Shubhal John just said this. Social selling is going to be at an all-time high in the next couple of years, but businesses will have to do it. I think that's absolutely essential. I mean, even from a simple brand-to-brand side, if someone sends out a tweet that's like, hey, brand one, I can't decide between you or brand two. Who should I go with? And it's astonishing right now the amount of major brands who won't reply.
Right.
And I think that's pretty much that. Yeah, I think we're going to see that develop to 100% and then trickle down into everything else that social selling touches on the personal level as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. We actually have a great tweet from one of my favorite tools. VSnap is in this. Their director of marketing is participating today, and he said, "Social business won't be a category; it'll just be an extension of how people sell online." And I agree. I think it's just going to be another communication channel, and we won't really refer to it maybe even as social. It'll just kind of fall into this, communication. So it's. I know we're just at the very beginning of the evolution, but it's an exciting place to be.
Yeah, for sure.
So I want to thank you, Reid, for being my co-pilot. I definitely could not have done this alone.
Thank you. Sorry about the drop-off. Once again, remind everybody, restart your computers.
Yeah, that's a tip of the day. Actually, IT knows something. But no, so if anyone out there want to learn more about Reid, be sure to follow him at HootReid. He's always online and tweeting some great things. And again, thank you everyone who's participating. Let me check real quick for any last minute questions, and then we can sign out for the day.
Awesome.
Let's see. Oh, well, John Golden quite poignantly has said the future is unwritten, which is, that is true. Who knows what actually may take place in the future. So I guess on that note, we can wrap it up. And thank you again. Have a wonderful day. Right. And we'll talk soon.
Yeah. Cheers.